In desperate situations at sea, where hope dwindles and survival instincts kick in, sailors faced unimaginable choices. You might be wondering, did sailors really resort to cannibalism when stranded? The answer is a chilling yes. Take for example the infamous case of the crew of the Mignonette, which sank in 1884. Left adrift in a lifeboat, their food supplies dwindling, they faced a harrowing decision. To survive, they would have to turn on one of their own. This moment sparked intense moral dilemmas and raised questions about the limits of human endurance. It's a dark truth that survival can push individuals into a realm of desperation, blurring the lines of ethics and humanity. In this life or death struggle, cannibalism wasn't just about hunger. It ignited debates over legality and morality. Is it a crime of necessity or a horrific betrayal? Understanding this gruesome reality sheds light on the extreme lengths people are willing to go when survival is on the line. The tales of cannibalism at sea aren't merely stories of horror. They reflect the depths of human instinct and the moral quandaries that arise when one is pushed to the brink. This revelation leads us to another grim aspect of life at sea: the management of human waste. How did sailors deal with sanitation on long voyages? Before the advent of modern plumbing, sailors faced a grim reality. In cramped quarters, waste accumulated quickly, often tossed overboard or left to fester in the ship's hold. The resulting conditions were often unsanitary and hazardous to health. The consequences of such negligence could be dire. Outbreaks of dysentery and other illnesses often plagued crews, leading to significant loss of life. Sailors relied on makeshift solutions like chamber pots, which offered little relief from the stench and danger that surrounded them. As we explore these practices, we gain insight into the harsh realities sailors endured and the toll it took on their health and well-being. As if that weren't enough, when food supplies ran low, sailors resorted to even more shocking practices. Imagine being forced to catch sharks for sustenance, employing horrific methods in the process. This brings us to the unsettling practice of shark fishing, which many sailors undertook in desperate attempts to supplement their diets. These sailors used raw meat as bait to lure sharks, often engaging in brutal tactics to catch and gut them. Sailors believed consuming shark liver could prevent scurvy due to its high vitamin content, even as they grappled with the grisly act of killing these creatures. This unusual choice reflects the lengths to which sailors would go to survive during their long and perilous voyages. Disease outbreaks were another dark reality faced by sailors at sea. How did they handle the grim conditions of plague ships? When outbreaks of cholera and typhus occurred, ships were often quarantined, leading to horrific conditions for those on board. Crew members were forced to manage not only the sick but also the dead, creating an environment rife with despair and loss. Learning about these grim realities helps us understand the immense challenges faced by maritime workers throughout history. Ships became floating tombs, and survival turned into a daily struggle against disease and death. Lastly, let's delve into the cruelty of press gangs. What was the dark practice of forcibly recruiting men into naval service? Press gangs were notorious for their brutal methods of recruiting men into the Navy, often through intimidation and violence. This practice stripped away freedom and choice, leaving families devastated and communities disrupted. The culture of fear surrounding press ganging fostered resentment towards naval forces, highlighting the darker side of maritime history. Understanding this cruel reality reveals the desperate measures taken to fill ship crews during wartime, often at the expense of innocent lives. Now you see that maritime history isn't just filled with tales of adventure and bravery. It also includes grotesque and desperate practices that underscore the struggle for survival. You've uncovered the grim realities behind these actions, reminding us that history is often more complicated than the heroic narratives we've been taught. Next time you think about maritime adventures, remember the hidden stories that reveal the darker aspects of human nature at sea. How did sailors cope with one of the most unpleasant realities of life at sea? The use of human waste aboard ships is often overlooked, but it reveals much about the harsh conditions faced by sailors on long voyages. Before modern plumbing, managing sanitation was a nightmare. In cramped quarters, sailors had no choice but to use makeshift methods, often tossing waste overboard. But did you know that this could lead to serious health issues? Accumulating waste could result in outbreaks of dysentery, a condition that devastated entire crews. Imagine being trapped on a ship surrounded by the smell of human waste and knowing that your health was at risk. Sailors had to use chamber pots, but these were far from sanitary. This grim reality of life at sea serves as a stark reminder of the physical toll of maritime work and the extreme conditions sailors faced daily. As we dig deeper into these maritime practices, it becomes clear that unsanitary conditions were a significant part of life at sea. The struggles of sailors didn't end with waste management. When food supplies dwindled, they faced even grimmer choices. When it came to survival, they often turned to catching sharks as a source of food. What shocking practice did sailors employ to supplement their diets? Shark fishing became a desperate solution, but it was not without its gruesome methods. Sailors would use raw meat as bait and gut the sharks for their flesh and liver. Picture this: a crew desperate for sustenance, pulling in a shark and preparing it for consumption. The belief was that shark liver was rich in vitamins and could help prevent scurvy, but the grisly process of catching and preparing these creatures raises questions about the lengths to which sailors would go in dire situations. Sailors had to adapt to the most shocking practices to stay alive, and this unusual diet choice reflects their desperate survival tactics. As we we look into the life aboard ships, we can't ignore another dark reality: disease outbreaks. How did sailors deal with disease outbreaks at sea? Ships were sometimes quarantined due to the spread of diseases like cholera and typhus, leading to horrific conditions on board. Imagine being confined in a small space, surrounded by the sick and the dying. While resources dwindled, crew members had to manage the sick and dead amidst limited supplies, creating an environment of despair and suffering. Disease outbreaks could decimate entire crews, leading to tragic tales of loss. Learning about these grim realities sheds light on the immense challenges faced by maritime workers throughout history. Ships became not just vessels of adventure, but floating tombs, where survival meant battling against disease as much as the elements. Now let's shift our focus to another grim aspect of maritime history: the practice of press gangs. What was the dark practice of forcibly recruiting men into naval service? Press gangs were notorious for their brutal tactics, often using intimidation and violence to fill ship crews. This practice stripped away the freedom and choice of many men, leaving families devastated and communities disrupted. Imagine the fear instilled in communities as men were dragged away from their homes to serve on ships against their will. Press ganging created a culture of resentment towards naval forces, highlighting the darker side of maritime history. Understanding this cruel practice provides insight into the desperate measures taken to cruise ships during wartime. Now you see that the world of maritime history is not just filled with tales of bravery and exploration. It also includes grotesque and desperate practices that highlight the struggle for survival. You've uncovered the grim realities behind these actions, reminding us that history is often more complicated than the heroic narratives we've been taught. Next time you think about maritime adventures, remember the hidden stories that reveal the darker aspects of human nature at sea. What shocking practice did sailors use to supplement their diets? When food supplies ran low, sailors turned to catching sharks, sometimes employing horrific methods to do so. Picture this: a ship adrift in the vast ocean, the crew desperate for sustenance, and the only option left is to fish for one of the most feared predators of the sea. In these extreme circumstances, sailors would use raw meat as bait to lure in sharks, a practice that sounds grisly but was a matter of survival. Imagine the scene: a sailor gripping a fishing line, the sun beating down as they await the telltale tug of a shark on the other end. Once caught, the sailors didn't hold back. They would gut the sharks, extracting the flesh and especially the liver. But here's the twist: sailors believed that consuming shark liver, rich in vitamins, could prevent scurvy, a common affliction on long voyages. This unusual dietary choice highlights the desperate survival tactics employed during their perilous journeys. But what does this say about the human condition? Most people think of sailors as brave adventurers, yet in reality they were often pushed to their limits, resorting to methods that today might be deemed barbaric. The practice of shark fishing wasn't just about filling bellies. It also underscores the dire circumstances that forced men to abandon their morals and adhere to survival instincts. Now let's explore another dark aspect of life at sea: the grim reality of plague ships. How did sailors deal with disease outbreaks on board? Ships were sometimes quarantined due to outbreaks of diseases like cholera and typhus. Imagine being confined on a ship with limited resources, surrounded by the sick and the dying, while the crew struggled to manage the chaos. Crew members had to handle the sick and the dead, creating an environment fraught with despair. Disease outbreaks could decimate entire crews, leading to tragic tales of loss and suffering. The horror of watching friends and fellow sailors succumb to illness would have been overwhelming. These grim realities provide profound insight into the challenges faced by maritime workers throughout history. When you think about maritime history, it's easy to romanticize the adventure and exploration. But behind the stories of discovery lies a darker truth. Sailors faced unimaginable hardships that tested their very humanity. The tale of shark fishing and plague ships serves as a stark reminder of the lengths people would go to survive and the harrowing conditions they endured. This dual narrative of survival and suffering reveals the complexities of life at sea, urging us to reconsider how we view maritime history. Next time you hear stories of sailors bravely navigating the open ocean, remember the hidden struggles that often go untold and the disgusting practices that became a matter of life and death. How did sailors deal with disease outbreaks at sea? Ships were sometimes quarantined due to outbreaks of diseases like cholera and typhus, leading to horrific conditions. Imagine being trapped on a confined vessel with limited resources, surrounded by the sick and dying, as despair spreads like wildfire among the crew. In these dire situations, crew members faced the harrowing reality of managing both the sick and the deceased, creating an atmosphere filled with hopelessness. Disease outbreaks on ships could decimate entire crews, transforming what was once a thriving vessel into a floating tomb. Most people think of naval life as adventurous, filled with tales of discovery. The grim reality of plague ships tells a different story. For many sailors, their greatest enemy wasn't the open ocean, but the diseases lurking in their cramped quarters. The limited resources on board meant that sailors often had to make impossible choices. They struggled with how to care for their fellow crew members while also protecting themselves from the spreading illness. As illness took hold, the ship would become eerily quiet, with only the sounds of coughing and the moans of the sick echoing through the ship. Crew members could easily succumb to despair, knowing that their fate was uncertain and that death was a constant companion. Moreover, the stench of sickness and death permeated the air, creating an environment that was both physically and psychologically psychologically torturous. How did sailors maintain their sanity amid such chaos? Many turned to rituals or created makeshift memorials for their lost companions, desperately trying to hold on to a semblance of humanity in the face of overwhelming despair. As these disease outbreaks unfolded, the maritime community faced criticism and scrutiny. Some blamed the sailors for poor hygiene practices, while others pointed fingers at the ship owners who prioritized profit over the health and safety of their crews. This conflict highlights the challenges of maritime work and the often ignored realities that these men faced. Learning about the grim realities of plague ships reveals the often unspoken struggles of those who ventured into the unknown. It serves as a reminder that beneath the romanticized stories of adventure lies a darker side filled with suffering and loss. The story of these sailors is one of survival against the odds, highlighting the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Next time you think about life at sea, remember the sailors who battled not only the vast ocean, but also the insidious diseases that claimed so many lives. Their stories of struggle remind us that history is rich with complexities, revealing the true nature of humanity in the most challenging of circumstances. Now you see that the world of maritime history is not just filled with tales of bravery and exploration. It also includes grotesque and desperate practices that highlight the struggle for survival. The stories you've uncovered reveal a side of human nature that many prefer to forget, showcasing the extremes individuals faced when pushed to their limits. Throughout this journey, you've explored the gruesome practice of cannibalism at sea, where survival instincts took precedence over morality. Famous cases like the Mignonette remind us that when stranded, sailors had to grapple with life and death decisions that many of us cannot even fathom. These chilling choices speak to the raw human instinct to survive, regardless of the consequences. You've delved into the appalling realities of sanitation on long voyages. With no modern plumbing, sailors face the daunting task of managing human waste in cramped conditions. The accumulation of waste led to significant health issues, further complicating their struggle against the unforgiving sea. This unsanitary environment serves as a stark reminder of the harsh realities sailors endured, often sacrificing their well-being for the sake of survival. Then there's the shocking practice of shark fishing. In moments of desperation, sailors resorted to catching sharks, using brutal methods to supplement their diets. The belief that consuming shark liver could stave off scurvy highlights the lengths to which they went to secure nourishment. This unusual dietary choice is a testament to the dire conditions sailors faced, forcing them to adapt in ways that would seem unimaginable today. You also explored the grim reality of plague ships, where disease outbreaks created an atmosphere of despair and loss. Quarantined due to outbreaks of cholera and typhus, crew members struggled to care for the sick while managing their own fears. These harrowing conditions not only decimated crews, but also reflect the vulnerability of maritime workers throughout history. Lastly, the dark practice of press gangs emerged as a disturbing reality, forcing men into naval service stripped them of their freedom and choice, leaving a trail of devastated families and community. This cruelty highlights the desperate measures taken to fill ship crews during wartime, emphasizing the often overlooked aspects of maritime history. In summary, the tales of cannibalism, sanitation struggles, shark fishing, plague ships, and press gangs reveal a more complicated narrative of maritime life. These hidden stories challenge the heroic ideals often associated with seafaring adventures and remind us that the struggle for survival can reveal the darker aspects of human nature. As you reflect on these maritime practices, remember the profound lessons they offer about resilience, desperation, and the lengths to which people will go to survive at sea. If you enjoyed this epic journey, please subscribe to our channel for more thrilling historical tales. Don't miss out on new videos. Hit the notification bell to stay updated.